go to the phones. You're calling from a 650 area code. Who's this?
Hey, how's it going, Sam? This is Garrett calling from Sacramento.
Hello, Garrett. What's on your mind?
I'm in the area of the wildfires that were happening up in Paradise, and I'm from San Bruno originally, where we had the gas pipeline explosion over there back in, I think, 2010. I had a couple buddies that passed away in that one. I have some friends that are up in Paradise right now, kind of suffering from that wildfire. And I've been looking at the whole PG&E issue and sort of their liability within causing the campfire.
Explain to people why they would have liability.
So they have started a number of fires throughout the years. I think, as people might know, California's been in a drought over the last 5+ years, and we've had a number of wildfires that have increased in size every year. We had initially one of the most tragic wildfires up in Santa Rosa back in 2015, and we had the Mendocino fire up in Mendocino County, and a lot of these are started by down power lines that aren't maintained. The maintenance.
People should know that PG&E is the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and I don't know the background on PG&E, but if it's anything like, let's say, what we see in in the East here, National Grid, you've got one big company that buys up a lot of smaller companies, and the first thing they do is they cut back on the sort of maintenance of lines and sort of go more towards a model that is literally putting fires out. Like when we see that something has gone awry, we go fix it, as opposed to sort of going around. I mean, it used to be that Niagara which was bought by National Grid, they'd come out and they'd cut trees that were impinging upon lines before there was a problem. And
and they do that with PG&E, but it's typically when it's a problem.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They slightly change the threshold in which they will go out and do work. They will wait for it to become a problem, and it's far more efficient from a dollar standpoint. But it's not far more efficient when it comes to averting possible disasters. And particularly now when we're in an era, and we're going to be even more in an era, where the potential for disaster and the severity of those disasters is greater because of changes in our climate.
And so that kind of brings me into one of these legislations that has been recently passed. SB 901 is a California State Senate bill that was passed last year, and it had to do with the Santa Rosa fires, the San Bruno explosion, and I mean, they had dozens of fires just in 2017 that left 46 people dead, over 9,000 homes destroyed. And the California state legislature is concerned that PG&E will become insolvent. They'll have to go bankrupt due to the costs associated with penalties from causing these fires, from civil lawsuits, from penalties that they incur. So they passed this legislation that allows them to pass that cost on to consumers. And I just don't see I don't see how that's helpful when you look at the company, and I mean, they've taken regulation onto their own.
It's less than helpful, because it's subsidizing essentially their cutting corners, and it's subsidizing.
Exactly. And it makes it dangerous for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't follow proper regulation. They go. So my dad teaches a lot of classes for firefighters, on how to respond to hazardous materials. And what a lot of these companies will do, they just had one down in Imperial County that tried to do this. They'll try and create their own board and get state approval to have a company self-regulate themselves. So in Imperial County, it was several oil refineries that got together and said, hey, we want to be able to self-regulate this. And PG&E has approval in many areas of the state to sort of do their own thing. Last week, I had just in front of my own house gas leak, which, you know, being from San Bruno is kind of scary to me. You know, I understand what can happen with that. And the way that they handled it just seemed so irresponsible. They let cars drive by while they were literally opening up the asphalt to open up this busted gas line. And they ended up having to run up and evacuate everybody in the area because of it. Because, well, hey, now we have this gas leaving and it's a combustion issue. And they just don't seem to follow the regulation, and they're more concerned with how it's going to affect their investors rather than the people that consume it.
Garrett, I appreciate the call.
Of course. Left is best. Thank you guys for doing your work. Long-time listener, and I appreciate what you do, Sam.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks for calling in. People, just to remind people, if they don't know what Garrett's talking about, the San Bruno gas leak explosion happened, I think it was in 2011, 2010, somewhere 2009, somewhere about 7-8 years ago. I think it was just before we started this show, maybe. I can't, I mean, there were a number of deaths, and it just blew up like a neighborhood, essentially. I don't remember other details of it, but I think it was right before we started the show. You know, this is why, you know, if you're going to allow the consolidation of these enterprises, you really start to lose any type of semblance of argument as to why the U.S. government should not be owning these, why these should not be government-owned entities. Our, you know, infrastructure, it seems to me to be one of those things where it's just, we have proof, time and time again, proof that we can do this just as well, if not better. Or I should say, for the same amount of money, we can do it better, without a doubt. You just take the profit out of it. I mean, just those resources are just going to go back into providing it. And you cannot say that there's competition, because there is no competition. PG&E does not have any competition. And you can hire the same experts. Just don't need to provide shareholder returns.